Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Verona, and I am the Dean at the University of Miami School of Law. Welcome to the first session of our four-part workshop series entitled Mindfulness Practice for the Legal Community During COVID-19, brought to you by the Mindfulness and Law program at Miami Law and its director, Professor Scott Rogers. There are 160 of you as registered attendees. Almost 100 of you have already logged in. Welcome. We are delighted to host you this afternoon for this workshop. This workshop, like all four workshops in the series, will be about 30 minutes long. Professor Rogers will lead us, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions of Scott at the end of the workshop. To ask a question, simply click on the Q&A icon below, and we will address some of your questions at the end of the session. Professor Scott Rogers is a nationally and internationally renowned expert in mindfulness and law. He founded our Mindfulness and Law program at Miami Law and is the co-founder and director of Mindfulness, the University Mindfulness Research and Practice Initiative. Professor Rogers is an award-winning author and leader in the mindfulness movement, and I am so very honored to count on him as a colleague and a friend. Scott, take it away.
Thank you, Dean Verona, for that thoughtful introduction. And also, thank you for genuinely caring about the well-being of our students, of our colleagues practicing law, teaching law, in whatever way, participating meaningfully in the which serves our society in such important ways. And wonderful to be here with all of you. You know, today we have the opportunity, this is a big picture look at mindfulness, and over the course of the 4 sessions, we'll zero in on increasing specifics, but to take a good look at mindfulness, this interesting thing called mindfulness, and to better understand the ways that it can be useful to us in our lives. Perhaps now as important as ever in these difficult and challenging times, but life is a series of difficult and challenging times, along with all of the other extraordinary and wonderful gifts that it brings as well. And for those of you who are new to mindfulness, it's our intention that this offer you a basic foundation in mindfulness that will serve you very well. And for those of you who have a pretty strong foundation, we're interested in sharing with you aspects and at a way that we can increase and enhance our appreciation of its nuance. So welcome to everyone, wherever you find yourself in relationship to mindfulness. Now, at this stage, at the very outset, it probably would be a good thing, wise of me, to offer you all a definition. And I'll share with you, I'm reluctant to do so. There's something about this thing called mindfulness that when we try to put it into words can help us and be useful, but can also get in the way. Let me offer you an example. Take the definition. Mindfulness is being aware of what is taking place in the present moment. Now that sounds pretty good. Mindfulness is being aware of what is taking place in the present moment. For many of us, that probably means something, and I think it does. Feels like we get it. We have a good sense of what that is suggesting. But let's knock off the last word. Mindfulness is being aware of what is taking place in the present. Well, that seems to make pretty good sense too. Mindfulness is being aware of what is taking place. That too. Mindfulness is being aware of what is. Yes, what is, that's right. Mindfulness is being aware. Mindfulness is being. Ooh, now it seems to be moving somewhere even more splendid. Mindfulness is. You can see where this is going. Before you know it, there's nothing left. But this is not some esoteric enterprise. This is serious business. That's why the likes of professional athletes, business leaders, physicians, members of the military are taking a keen interest. Lawyers, judges, accountants, firefighters, police, teachers, educators, psychologists are taking a keen interest and look at this thing called mindfulness. Now, one reason I think a phrase like this, as useful as it is, can get in the way, but nonetheless mean something, is because at a very deep level, we already get it. It's like we spend a lot of time struggling to find our way to a place that we already know and where we already are, but we keep forgetting. We know what it is to be present and mindfully aware. If Justice Potter Stewart were here and he were interested in mindfulness and this elusive place called the present moment, I suspect he'd say something like, I can't define it, but I know it when I'm in it. And the rub is, we don't always know it when we're not. Now, that being said, mindfulness defined can be helpful. And as we in the law, scrutinizers of language, to even suggest that we wouldn't define a key term, well, those could be fighting words. So I'll share with you two definitions that I think zero in on an aspect of mindfulness that can be especially helpful to us today. The first is by Sharon Salzberg. Some of you may know Sharon Salzberg, an esteemed leader in the world of mindfulness and mindfulness teaching. And she offers us this. She says, mindfulness is being able to tell the difference between what's taking place and the story we're telling ourselves about what's taking place. Get that? What's taking place and the story we're telling ourselves about what's taking place. Now, moving from mindfulness teacher to mindfulness researcher, Amishi Jha, a cognitive neuroscientist, she defines mindfulness this way. Mindfulness is characterized. It's a mental mode. She's a scientist. It's a mental mode characterized by attending to present moment experience without conceptual elaboration or emotional reactivity. Conceptual elaboration. What does she mean by that? Telling ourselves a story, making something into more or less than it actually is. And of course, when we do that, when there is a gap between what's taking place and the story we're telling ourselves about what's taking place, when we're not attending to present moment and experience in a manner that doesn't contain conceptual elaboration, we will have emotional reactivity. And so they're both pointing us in the same direction. And think about the stories we tell ourselves and are telling ourselves and each other and others are telling us, and how we bounce off each other. So what does it mean to see a little bit more clearly? Not see with perfect precision, but to see things a little bit more clearly. Now, the answer, I don't think, is in expecting that we're going to stop telling ourselves stories or that we should. We're wired this way for lots of good reasons evolutionarily, but also we're storytellers. We make sense of the world. We are creative. It's one of the things that makes life worth living. And mindfulness isn't interested or invested in stopping or changing the nature of or the kinds of thoughts we're having. It simply isn't, though we may have that interest. Rather, what is it to have the story arising in the mind and to be aware of the story, that it is a story, something to investigate for its usefulness, to be aware of mind wandering as it's happening and skilled in the capacity to be more meaningfully engaged in that moment by what we do next or the way we are next. This is something that Aristotle alludes to when he says that the mark of an educated mind is the ability to entertain a thought without believing it to be true. Thoughts are not facts. And the practice of mindfulness is exquisitely tailored in the direction of this very project. Now, as we move towards our period of practice, I'd like to plant a few seeds that will sprout in time, as time passes, that pertain to what we could call the elements of mindfulness. That is, we're dropping beneath a definition. This is not something that's often teased apart, but I think it can be very helpful to do so. In my 30 years as a student of mindfulness, and I say student because it's wonderful to teach it and share it, but at heart, always and forever a student, I found there to be 5 core elements that run through many, many practices. and of what it means to be mindfully aware. And I'll briefly touch on them and then we'll explore them more fully in time. They are attention. Attention is fundamental, our capacity to pay attention. Even right now, you're paying attention to me, and or wherever your attention is, whether you're aware of it or not, is fundamental to mindfulness. Relaxation, the capacity to bring ourselves into a self-regulated state, and the way that that self-regulated state in turn facilitates our ability to have greater mastery over our attention so that we can concentrate. The third element is concentration. These are distinct, overlapping. Concentration practices are by and large what many mindfulness practices are focused on. Awareness, to be aware of, and connection. And these are the various themes that we'll be exploring in time. And as we practice the various forms of mindfulness, and as you engage in this on your own, you'll meet up with these elements again and again and at different times and in different ways. And so this will allow us to, as we proceed, develop a keener understanding of mindfulness, and also help explain why so many practices can be seemingly challenging and the extraordinary fruits of practice, as the science points to more and more. And I believe that the more we have clarity around these fundamentals, the more patience we'll have with the practice, and you might want to reflect on that in terms of your own relationship, the more interested we'll be in it, and the more we'll readily sense its benefits. And so in just a few moments, we will do a mindfulness practice known as focused attention. Though it goes by different names: breath awareness, awareness of the breath. But this is the name that we use in the scientific research that we do. It's the name that we use at the law school. And it's what many in the realm of investigating mindfulness look to, because it's also very useful by, in many ways, speaking to what it is: focused attention. And so here's what we'll be doing if it's new to you. And my suspicion is these will not be a new instruction, but the interesting question will be, how will we relate to it and in time? So as its name suggests, we'll be focusing attention on an object. And that object will be, yes, you probably know, though it doesn't need to be, the breath. Attending to the breath. There's attention. With the intention to keep our attention on that object, concentrated on the object. There's concentration. When this happens, we feel more relaxed. That is a reliable output of an outcome of a steadier, trained attention. But to be more steady in our mind and body allows us to concentrate, and so they work together. And of course, I'll say at times, and if you notice your mind wandering, well, that's awareness. You're having a thought and you're being pulled away by the thought. Your attention is gone, but you become aware. And then connection, and we'll explore specific practices that address connection. So why do this? Well, as people have found, and as we might have in particular consideration at this moment in time, it helps us to be more focused and to concentrate on what's actually taking place and to stay with it. This is a practice in the service of that. Science finds that as a result, not surprisingly, although 20 years ago this would have been very surprising, but now that we can peer into the interior of the brain and its activity, that there is a thickening of regions of the prefrontal cortex that are associated with focus and concentration. It can tone down activity in areas of the brain that are associated with emotional reactivity. It can help reduce anxiety and the likelihood of a depression relapse. It can curb addictive impulses and reduce things in the medical health realm, such as inflammation, and improve immune functioning. And it's like, really? All that? Really? Well, as we begin to look at these elements like attention and what attention offers us, and concentration and awareness and relaxation and connection, it makes more sense. But what's important is the practice. So in a moment, I'm going to say, let's lower or close our eyes and invite you to do so. But first, let me say a couple things. It doesn't matter if you're sitting on the couch, sitting in a chair, sitting on the floor, sitting outside, wherever you may be. You can be laying down, you can be standing up. It's not the form it takes, it's the attention and awareness that we cultivate through the practice. But we do wish to be, as much as we can, upright and engaged, because this is a practice of waking up, not falling asleep. eyes lowered, closed, staring right out in front of you, it doesn't matter. Different wisdom traditions, different forms of practice. Again, we are cultivating an inner gaze, which we could use a little bit more of perhaps. And so if you are able to lower or close your eyes, that can be useful to tone down that visual field, but the visual field could also be useful. And so whatever is most useful to you. And then this breath. There will be a moment at the beginning where I suggest that we slow down the breath because that can be helpful for relaxation. But after that, let the breath do what it will do. This is not a practice in manipulating the breath, nor is it a practice in trying to feel anything in particular, but rather to be aware of what it is that we are experiencing and to hold steady or steadier in the midst of what it is that arises, so that our fundamental gifts and instincts and genius and knowledge and what we've practiced and learned can be more responsive, and we can be more responsive, and it can be more readily available to us. So with that, and if you haven't put away distracting technologies, this would be a good time to do so. Let us bring ourselves into a posture that's upright and stable, whatever form that may take for you, as we lower or close our eyes, whichever you prefer. Resting attention on the sensations of this body, this precious body, in this moment as we breathe. Aware of the sensations of where your bottom meets the cushion or the floor or the seat beneath you. Aware of the sensations of where your back may be meeting something behind you, these touch points. Directing attention to the sensations of the hands resting one in the other, or on your lap or by your side. Not to the hands, to the sensations. That's how we know these hands. Aware of the feet, where they make contact, the sensations, the touch points with the ground or your shoes or socks. Awareness and attention is descending a little bit more fully into the body as we come to our senses. And the more fully we inhabit the sensory connectedness to this body, the less attention there is to wander. Though wander, we will, again and again. So throughout this practice, when you notice that your mind has wandered, you have become a little bit more aware of this moment. And with that, an extraordinary opportunity to make a choice, to be the architect of this moment. And for this practice, we say, ah, there I went. I realized it. How extraordinary is that? And we return to the object of attention. And so we are attending now to the sensations of the breath as it flows through the body. This sense of the torso expanding, the rib cage lifting on the in-breath, and softening on the out-breath. You may know these sensations at the nostrils or the mouth or the movement of the chest or belly. And if for you there is a different object of attention that you reliably look to, by all means. But it's our attention that we're cultivating. The object is of secondary concern. And so for the next few minutes, let's rest our attention on the sensations of the breath as it moves through the body, with the intention to remain where we've chosen to be. Aware of the breath. Breathing in and breathing out. And because it can be helpful at times to take a slower, deeper breath to somewhat reliably create a little bit of calm, a little calmer state, a little bit more relaxed. Let's take a few slower, deeper breaths, breathing in and breathing out as we are aware of breathing in, aware of breathing out, a little slower, a little deeper, a little fuller. In and out. And then allowing breathing to resume its natural pacing and rhythm, whatever that may be. Aware of this body sitting, aware of this body moving with the breath as the breath flows through the body. We are aware. We do not need to try to breathe. At least that would be a gift, which many of us have at this moment. We do not need to try to be aware. These are fundamental to our nature. There's no doing or trying. So if you find yourself in these practices trying to get somewhere or to do, notice that and return to the breath, which patiently awaits your return. And in a moment, we'll close this practice, inclining ourselves a little bit to next week, where we'll be exploring a practice known as loving kindness, a connection practice. And so we can bring a little bit of that into the closing of this practice. bringing to mind someone who you might wish a little happiness or health or safety to. And as you bring them to mind, wish for them, may you be safe, happy, healthy. And then turning attention to yourself and wishing for yourself the spreading of warmth. May I be safe. May I be happy, healthy. And then spreading this warmth out to all of us, those who are here now in this time together, exploring mindfulness, and everywhere, all over. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. Aware of the breath, aware of the sensations arising in the body, allowing this moment to be as it is. And when you're ready, in the next moment or two, with an awareness of doing so, lifting the gaze, opening the eyes.
Scott, on email, we received a question about COVID-19 and uncertainty, how it is that COVID-19 has brought with it so much uncertainty, as well as stress and discomfort, and of course, illness and everything else, disruption, etc. So the question is, how can mindfulness practice help us navigate the uncertainty that comes with COVID-19? And I see that there was another question posed that I will share with you in just a second.
It's an important question. How we relate to uncertainty, as many of us know, is far more challenging at times than the thing for which we are uncertain about. It's our relationship to that. So we'll be exploring this because it's very relevant. How does attention play into that? Well, everything's always uncertain. What happens is that our mind begins to ping or to sort of put a flag in something that is on our mind. Our attention zooms in that direction, latches on. We're not necessarily aware of how quickly that happened. And we then are stuck a little bit on those various thoughts. And then, of course, where our attention goes, so much follows, other thoughts. And then we begin to experience the parade of horribles and the catastrophizing, which then agitate. And what's happening along the way is that we've lost focus. We probably weren't intending to reflect on that at that time. There are times to reflect on that and to consider those things. It just hijacked our attention. And so what we're exploring with mindfulness is how to have a steadier attention, but even more important, as is fundamental in that practice, to be aware of when our attention does get pulled away, to notice that sooner and sooner and sooner, because its grip only tightens as we become more emotionally invested in that, and to be able to self-regulate in a more meaningful and skillful way. And also, when that doesn't happen, to be kind to ourselves. We're doing the best we can.
Ben Robinson posted not a question, but he wrote, "Thank you. I look forward to the next session," as do we all. Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
See you next week, everybody. Be well.